you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, you see that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead, click the subscribe button. New clips, new videos going up every single day. Also, we have an Aaron Torres Pod NCAA Tournament Survivor Pool that we're running right now. It's simple. Pick a team every day. If they win, you advance. The only catch, you cannot pick the same team twice. $20 to enter, minimum $500. But the more of you who enter, the bigger the pot gets, maybe up to thousands of dollars. So link, show description. Now, the video you came for. I don't know that there's any show anywhere that talks more college hoops transfer portal than we do. But the bottom line is that you guys and girls love it. And the bottom line is it's about that time to start talking about it. Now, it's kind of interesting from a calendar perspective because usually in years past, this was the day that the transfer portal opened. So the transfer portal opened historically the day after the bracket was announced. Coaches started complaining, hey, I'm spending all my time that I should be planning for the NCAA tournament. I'm instead focusing on the transfer portal. And so I just bring it up because they actually changed the portal window this year. It starts a little bit later. Portal usually opened at this time on the calendar, the day after the bracket came out. Coaches complained. So it technically doesn't open for another week, but it is not stopping players from entering. It is not stopping players from considering it. And especially, by the way, it's worth noting, like when coaches get fired, players are allowed to enter the transfer portal and schools are allowed to contact them. So the portal isn't technically open yet, but there are already some big names. Let's go ahead and dive into a few. First one you need to know, this guy entered just a few minutes, probably about an hour or so before we went live. Didon Thomas Jr. from UNLV. Listen, I'm here to tell you this. So Didon Thomas Jr., interesting story. UNLV just fired its coach, Kevin Kruger, the son of Lon Kruger, former player. This kid was his biggest recruit that he ever had there and the biggest star that has come through that program in a long time, okay? Very interesting story. He was a five-star recruit out of Vegas, class of 2025, I believe, or it would have been 2024, I guess. Ends up reclassifying and coming to UNLV a year early. Again, I'm telling you, this was a monster recruiting win for UNLV. Didon Thomas Sr., his dad actually played at UNLV under Jerry Tarkanian, one of Tarkanian's final teams. This is his son, gets to UNLV, and for an otherwise forgettable program, he was one of the few bright spots. 2 seasons ago, as a true freshman, one of the youngest players in college basketball, remember, he reclassified, 13 points a game, 5 assists a game as a freshman. This past year as a sophomore, 15 points, 5 assists per game as well. Lefty guard, gets to the rim, attacking, very good athlete. And what I think about him, first of all, he's a guy that could play anywhere. It's worth noting. He chose UNLV over UCLA, Gonzaga, Florida, Arizona, among others. So when you're getting recruited out of high school by Arizona, Gonzaga, Florida, whoever else I said, doesn't really matter. You can play anywhere. UCLA was the other school. Chose UNLV, but I think as he enters the portal, he will be as coveted as any player that we have this entire spring. He's a proven college player, can play anywhere. And I think the interesting thing about him, he's a little bit undersized. So, I don't think he's a great NBA prospect. And so he's a guy that, 2 or 3, 5 years ago, pre-NIL, he might have just gone pro and just been like, screw it, I got to make some money. But I think he's a guy that you could potentially have for 2 years. I think he could go to the SEC or the Big 10 or the Big 12 next year, average 17 a game and still come back as a senior because he's just at 6'1". He's not a great NBA draft prospect, but he can play anywhere. Listen, I would assume some of those relationships from the original recruitment would still stand. Florida's obviously going to need players after this year. Elijah Martin and Walter Clayton are both in their final year of eligibility. I think Will Richard might be as well, but Florida's going to need some guards. After that, Gonzaga's going to need a whole new roster. I mean, I don't think people understand. I think Gonzaga's top 6 scorers are out of eligibility after this year. So I'm not saying that those are going to be the landing spots. What I am saying is he has relationships. Those staffs haven't changed. Arizona, I'm not saying they wouldn't be in. I'm just saying I think Jaden Bradley is back next year, so maybe it doesn't make a ton of sense for him to go there. But yeah, Didon Thomas Jr. is the first name to know. Second name to know, another player who just was part of a program where the coach was fired. Fran McCaffrey out at Iowa. His leading scorer, Owen Freeman, entered the portal late last week. Okay, so this kid's been in for a few days. 7-foot center, 6'10", 17 points, 7 rebounds, 1.5 blocks per game. Really good player. Listen, he's not a great three-point shooter. Iowa, to their credit, in the past has actually developed a lot of bigs that can shoot the three ball. He is probably not one of them, or at least he hasn't proven that so far in his career. But when you, as a player in the Big Ten, can average the averages that he did, even on a not very good team, I think it speaks to the fact that you can play pretty much anywhere. Only thing with him, he is coming off an injury, missed the final about 15 or so games of the season. But when he played, he was awesome. 21-8 against Minnesota, 23-6 against USC, 22-5 in a couple out of conference games, 21-11 against Washington State earlier in the season. 6'10", pretty athletic, not a great three-point shooter. Like I said, a lot of those Iowa guys historically have been able to shoot threes, even the big guys. Listen, it's just internet speculation, but I think there's been a little bit of Michigan buzz. I think that one, to me, does make sense. They're going to lose Vlad Golden after the season, probably going to lose Danny Wolf, who could go pro. So they played with those 2 7-footers this year. They're going to need a replacement. Owen Freeman, really good player. And I think he has a chance to, he's kind of one of those, like D-Don Thomas. He's going to be able to go pretty much wherever he wants. Staying with the Iowa theme. A couple other guys, but the other one's Brock Harding. Listen, I'm not going to oversell this kid. If this was mid-April and the portal was humming, I don't know how much we'd be spending time on him, but is a starter in the Big Ten. 8.5 points per game, 5 assists per game is the important part. Listen, he's a little bit undersized, but again, you start in the Big Ten, you could play pretty much anywhere in college basketball, okay? So gets to the rim, kind of, listen, to his credit, smaller guy, but gets to all his spots, makes plays. And just a guy that has experience. And so I guess my thing with him would be, is this a scenario where you get, where you end up somewhere else? Could you come back? He's from Illinois. Does he stay in the Big Ten footprint? And then I guess my other question would be, is he kind of a lead guard or is he kind of a sixth man? I think in a best case scenario, he's maybe not your starter, but he's kind of the guy that off your bench that plays 28 minutes anyway. In some ways, and I know he's not the same player, he kind of reminds me like Hassan Diarra at UConn, where the best version of UConn was when Hassan Diarra was their sixth man, not their starting point guard playing 32 minutes a game. So we'll see what happens. It's early. I haven't seen even any speculation on him. But again, if you can start in the Big Ten, if you can average 8-9 points, 5.5, 6 assists per game, you can play. Really good player. Let's keep it going. These two names are big. You need to know them. This is important. Obi Agbim, okay, just entered the portal on Monday. Today's Monday, from Wyoming. Interesting story, and this is a story that's going to show itself over the course of the next few weeks, okay? He is one of these kids. He was a JUCO guy. Remember, all these JUCO guys got extra year of eligibility. The NCAA had that weird rule that passed that basically it wasn't a rule that passed. It was a judge basically said JUCO does not count against your clock. So everyone who has ever played JUCO has another year of eligibility. It's crazy. So we thought we were done with 25, 26-year-olds in college basketball. To quote Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. Okay, so this kid was a JUCO kid, goes to Wyoming, plays 1 year there, averages just under 18 points per game, and oh, by the way, shot 44% from the three-point line. So in his first year in Division I college basketball, insane. Averaged 18 points in the Mountain West, and again, 44% from three. Thing about him, he's kind of, to me, more of a combo guard than like a true point guard. I would say he doesn't necessarily like get a ton of others involved. He did lead Wyoming in assists with 3.5, but he's not a guy that's just going to totally set up other people. But if you can get buckets, if you can shoot 44% from behind the three-point arc, yeah, you're doing pretty good work. And yeah, he's a guy that I believe can be a difference maker at the power conference level. Listen, I will be real. First of all, I think everybody's going to be involved. I saw one of the lead Arkansas reporters, Kevin McPherson, who does a good job, say he thinks Arkansas is going to be involved. I'll be real. I don't really see how that would work. They already have 2 freshmen committed, Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas. DJ Wagner, I would think would come back, but maybe he's on the way out and Arkansas wants a veteran guard. Also seen some Kentucky speculation that this is a guy that Mark Pope would target to replace Lamont Butler next year. We know they have a Caden Lewis, low five-star, high 4-star coming in next year. So I just bring it up because this is a name to know, interesting name. We'll see what happens. Last name to know of the early group. This kid, Treson Eaglestaff, okay? If you miss this kid earlier in the year, remember, Alabama, if you remember, they played a game in North Dakota. It was for Grant Nelson, okay? So Grant Nelson, we talked about him in the portal a lot 2 years ago. He's from Devil's Lake, North Dakota. And to honor Grant Nelson, Alabama was like, you know what? Let's go back to North Dakota and let's play a game in your home state for you. Here's the thing, though. They go there and they almost lose because Treson Eaglestaff dropped 40 on their heads, okay? 8 for 18 from behind the three-point arc, 40 points against Bama. I remember texting our Torres on Bama kid, Drew, and he's like, why are we playing this game? We're going to freaking lose this game because this Eaglestaff kid is killing us right now. Now, maybe it says a little bit about Alabama's defense, but this kid is a baller. Like I said, 19 points per game, 36% from three. That three-point shooting is actually a little bit down from a year ago. Listen, whenever you make this comparison, like this is going to be the guy that we always compare to. I mean, it's hard. Little Dalton Connect vibes, 6'6", 6'7", puts the ball in the basket, put up 40 on Bama. And so I think, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he did actually plans to put his name in the draft. We'll see if that happens. I think he's probably going to get some very, very lucrative offers to stay in college basketball. I think it's early to speculate on where he could end up. And I'll say this for a lot of these kids too, is that, they may enter the portal thinking they have an idea of where they want to go. Then they get in the portal and it's like, oh my God, that school wants me. That school's offering that. I got to rethink it. I'll give you a quick side story. Cliff Omoyori, who's at Alabama right now, I can say on pretty good authority, when he entered the portal, he thought he knew where he was going, and he thought it was not going to be Alabama. Then he got in the portal. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, North Carolina wants me? And at the time, Kentucky, when Calipari was still there, wants me? And Alabama wants me? And all of a sudden, he didn't end up where he thought he was probably going to go when he entered the portal. And so I only bring it up because this Eaglestaff kid, if he ends up staying in college hoops, he's going to have interest from everybody. Listen, I'm not accusing anyone of tampering. I think Alabama would be crazy not to. Alabama should have pulled him aside on the way back to the locker room that night. Again, not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just saying Alabama saw it up close and in person. So again, I want to be clear. I love that staff over there. I'm not accusing Alabama of tampering. I'm just saying when you put 40 on Bama, yeah, you're pretty freaking good. Oh, should mention with the Eaglestaff, by the way, my buddy Jacob Polacek, beast of a recruiting writer, works for KSR. Already interviewed him, said he would be interested in Kentucky if Kentucky reached out. He's another kid that would fit perfectly with Kentucky. We'll see. Kentucky obviously is going to have some holes to fill after this season. I think he's getting a lot of money to play college basketball next year, and I think just about every school in America is going to reach out. By the way, a little bit of an interesting background, too. He has a Native American background, which I just think is really cool. Obviously, we know how big reservation basketball is in the Northwest area part of the country, Montana, Idaho, Arizona, I think, maybe Oklahoma. So a little bit of Native American in him. He talks about his heritage a lot. I just think it's a cool story. A story that, by the way, you'll be hearing plenty about as he goes through college basketball next year.